Greetings and salutations, guys. This is my spoiler-filled review of the finale of Star Wars Skeleton Crew. That's episode 8, entitled The Real Good Guys. So one more time, full spoiler warning from here on out. Look, right now we have no idea if there'll be a second season of this show, and I'm going to be pessimistic only because I don't want to get hurt. But yeah, it just seems like right now it's tough for these shows to get a renewal. There have been some reports of the first couple episodes not getting great numbers, even though the budget was much lower on this show than a lot of the other series have been. So who knows? Anything can happen. I would love to get more Skeleton Crew. But if this is it, if this is the end of the journey for this series, I think it was a really strong one, and I think it worked really well as a finale, and I'm just very happy with, this show in general. I don't think this finale was like the best episode of the show. Finales rarely are, but it was a very satisfying wrap-up for what's been such an engaging series. Just a Star Wars series that I think really did get back to the basics in a lot of ways, as far as adventure and just this sort of real feeling of, fantasy mixed with sci-fi and all the sort of classic Star Wars elements, with the focus on these kids and their perspective of it and making them sort of fans of Star Wars, stepping into Star Wars in a sort of meta way. It's all really worked. The characters have been great. And I think this finale was all a great punctuation on that. There was no huge twist here. And I think that the revelations that occurred, I guess I'm sure some people might criticize them as being predictable. To me, that means they were just well set up. So yeah, a lot of people had thought, I wonder if the supervisor isn't a real person or alien or any living being. It's just going to be sort of a computer, and that turned out to be the case. I didn't feel like, oh, well, I could see that coming. I don't think it was supposed to be some huge twist. It was just an interesting look at how this planet functions, and the fact that, Fern's mom knew that. This wasn't like she was finding out for the first time. This is just the society that they have all bought into. And, the other thing I sort of want to get ahead of is I did glance online at some reactions right after this. I was on the socials at the same time as other people, and I saw that some people were like, oh, this can't be the finale, it's such a cliffhanger. I was like, this isn't a cliffhanger. In no way is this a cliffhanger. This is definitely the culmination of this story. And that doesn't mean it answers every single question you might have about everything with these characters, and it doesn't mean you might not wonder what happens next with them, and I would love to see more of that, but I do think that this felt like a true conclusion. And yeah, those little elements, like having the fact that the supervisor is this sort of droid computer and that everyone just accepts that. Well, yes, I would love to learn more about that. That is intriguing, but I also don't think it's a cliffhanger. It's just something out there to sort of be answered in some other story one day. And then I loved, the payoff, for instance, on the fact that, yes, there were guns on the roof of the school on that other planet. And that would mean probably, since these planets were very much cloned from each other as far as everything, how the city was built and how all the buildings were set up, that there were probably guns on the roof of the school here. Turned out to be the case. And yeah, I thought that was great. I thought that Neil getting to be the one to sort of discover that and make use of it was great. The finale really was mostly focused on Fern and Wim. And it's been interesting because when the show began, Wim was our Mikey. Again, I'm going to use the Goonies analogy because the show was asking for it. And in most of those movies, yes, there's like a plucky group of kids, but they're still your focal point. They're still the one that's certainly getting more attention, and it does seem like they are the protagonist if you had to pick one. And that was Wim, for sure, when we began. But really, as the show progressed, it became Wim and Fern. They really felt like the co-leads. So it felt appropriate here at the end that they really were central to what was going on here with Jod, with, exactly what was going to occur in that tower, and how their parents were involved in all of it. And at the same time, Neil and KB, who are very important, integral part of the show, they both got to play their part in a really wonderful way. When the kids all went to the ship, by the way, even though Neil had been left behind, I did not expect KB to be by herself going off into space. And I thought it was great that she did, that she got that moment going out there. And yeah, I didn't really need her fake out death. I don't think any of us thought that she was really dead, but Fern did, and that's what matters. But yeah, I thought that all really worked. And then going back to Wim and Fern in that tower and how intense that all was. Because yeah, I did not expect any of these 4 kids to get killed at the end, nor did I want that to happen. I did not want this show to have some big tragic moment at the end. But the threat of it really did have some big emotional resonance here, and especially with Jod and the fact that, yeah, they really went all in on him as the villain here. That doesn't mean he was a one-dimensional villain. I'll get to that in a moment, but they didn't pull it back, and I thought they might. I was like, oh, is he still gonna have some weird moment of redemption? No, he gets some moment of nuance and some sort of depth to what really motivates him at the end, that gives him an air of tragedy as a villain. But he was still all in on what he was doing. And yeah, it really made it all feel so personal. It made me, there was a certain point in the finale where I was like, man, I think this is one of the most hateable villains I've ever seen in Star Wars. And that was just because of the betrayal, right? That we were conned into liking him and, rooting for him along the way. And also the fact that they were doing such a great job of manipulating us, the writers, because they know that we're going to expect him to be, the lovable pirate, a heart of gold, acts like a jerk, but really isn't. So when he is threatening them with a lightsaber, threatening to kill Wim's father in front of him, it feels awful and it feels like contemptible. And yeah, then they did a nice little switch there at the end when we did get those little tidbits about him. I really appreciate that they did not make him another person who personally survived Order 66. He was not a kid at the Jedi Temple. He had not begun his training when all this happened. Instead, he had this more interesting, I think, backstory that did explain how he could use the Force a little bit, but it said he was being taught by a Jedi on the run, and she only gave him a little bit of training, and then she was killed in front of him. And I thought that was a really great new twist on all the different ways we've developed, people with Force potential and potential Jedi. And it's a very easy explanation for anyone like Jod's age to say, well, he was at the temple. He was there. But I think it was much more interesting to say that he was not there. He was never a trained Jedi. And then also the counterpoint between him and Wim's viewpoints on the galaxy by the end, which is them both kind of agreeing there's probably more bad than good, but Wim being like, hey, but there's good everywhere, even if it's surrounded by a lot of bad. But Jod basically taking the perspective, hey, doesn't it suck that most people seem to be bad out there? And I guess I'm just going to embrace that and become one of them. But also sort of see himself as this twisted, benevolent ruler, right? He is going to crush these people and then take over. And yeah, it felt really unsettling in a great way to have those pirates attack the planet and have these people's lives disrupted like that. It all leads, of course, to the fact that the day is saved, but then we have to wonder what's going to happen next, because now they are going to be introduced to the galaxy and, are probably not ready because they've been so isolated. And yeah, a season 2 would be fascinating to see how that's developing and what it's like for them to be brought into the New Republic and to have all these new experiences. On the other hand, it can just be an interesting now other element for Star Wars to use, and for some story that's set 10, 20 years later to talk about, oh, they're from At-Aten. They're from that planet that was isolated all those years. Also, great moment with the supervisor when he says the last transmission we got was telling us that the Jedi are traitors. Both because it's just a great, like, oh crap moment. It is the one other moment they involve Order 66, which is, of course, this incredibly important focal point to Star Wars. But then again, it does make you wonder what exactly was going on through the Empire into the New Republic, because we did learn that people up top knew about At-Aten, but the last transmission they ever got was, Order 66, basically. So now you have to wonder, why did they never contact them again? I mean, maybe it's just there was bigger things to deal with, or is there another explanation out there? So yeah, it's funny that I'm giving you all these questions I have that excite me for potential, but at the same time, this is a story about these 4 kids who went out on an adventure in space and come back to their planet and have to save their planet. And that story gets, wrapped up in a really nice way. And yeah, KB's fake out death was kind of extraneous, but I thought that was a really great visual at the end with her falling out of the ship, surrounded by all of those cascading Old Republic credits, the thing that was so important, so valuable to Jod and to the other pirates. And it's inconsequential to these kids. They are just so thrilled to see their friend is okay, to be reunited with her. I thought that was a really wonderful way to visualize that. Now, of course, Jod also lives. And I do like that he lives, because for a moment it seemed like he was going to die, right? Like when he's watching his ship crash, it's like, oh, is it going to crash right into him and kill him? I had a feeling maybe that this was something that they highly considered and decided not to do. But I think it's more interesting to have him out there. And yes, that does mean maybe he can get redeemed at some point. I don't think that the door is completely closed. Like I said last week, there are some characters in Star Wars who've done way worse than Jod and have gotten redemption. Or he can be out there to be a recurring thorn in their side. Who knows? But for now, I really dug this show. I think it just was a great return to form for Star Wars. Going forward, I think Star Wars is in a strange place where there have been too many shows. They've diluted sort of the power of the brand. There's been too long without a movie, and they really need to kind of make those movie special events again. And I don't know if The Mandalorian and Grogu is going to be the one to do it, since it's going to feel like the continuation of a TV series. But Skeleton Crew kind of feels like the kind of show maybe they should have been doing more of. I mean, it reminded me a lot of season 1 of Mandalorian, which again, different in a lot of ways, but at the same time capturing that great Star Wars adventure feeling. I think that this show did that so well. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to mention, because I'm doing this kind of quickly right after I watched the episode. Oh, I really like the chase through the school when they were being chased on the hover bikes and they actually go into their school. It was a great way to show that the danger had come to their world, because we'd established this planet early on and how it was just this sort of peaceful suburbia, and now they had brought danger right to their everyday life. I thought that was a great visual way to show that in the episode. And I'm honestly happy that they resisted the temptation to have anyone who arrives with I almost said rebels, but they're the New Republic at this point, with the New Republic at the end to be a familiar face. I just don't think we always need to do that, and it's totally okay if this show and these characters just would not rank important enough yet for that to happen. But I did like, you got a little bit of an Easter egg there to Star Wars Rebels with those B-Wings and the way they shot their lasers being like the prototype, the blade that we saw on Star Wars Rebels. So that was a cool sort of, I want to say deep cut, but if you watch Rebels, it was just part of a big episode of the show. But that's the perfect thing, right? It's a little layer in there for those of us who love Rebels. It's not necessary to enjoy the episode. It's a cool laser, no matter whether you saw Rebels or not. Cool laser is a cool laser, like my parents always said. All right, guys, those were my thoughts on the Star Wars Skeleton Crew finale. What'd you think of the finale? Do you want to see more of this show? Let me know in the comments. And yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the situation here in Los Angeles and the ordeal that so many people have gone through, and everything that people have lost with their homes in just this past week. And so I'm going to put some links in the description to some organizations that you can donate to. Some of them go to firefighters, some of them go to people in need. There are a lot of people in need, a lot of people who have lost their homes, lost everything. And, every dollar does count and is, I'm sure, much appreciated by those people. All right, guys, that is it for now. I guess the next Star Wars project we have is going to be Andor Season 2, which I'm greatly looking forward to. All right, thanks and take care.